break into parts. Breaking a problem into parts is a really cool way of solving a problem. I want you to notice the parallel between that and what we've been doing earlier on with our data structures, which is essentially a good design. A good OO design is one where you break the objects into small objects. We don't want one big God object. We want lots of little objects. And we don't want any of those objects to be too small or they're trivial and they're just wasting our time and adding complexity. And we don't want them to be too big because they're error-ridden and complex and they'll just hide everything and everything will stuff up. And solving a problem algorithmically is exactly the same. We want to break it into parts, and none of those parts should be trivial and none of them should be too big. And as a part that's too big, we want to keep breaking it down. And then now we're going to have a series of interacting parts to our problem. And exactly the same as with data. Oh, look, I'm going the other way this time. Exactly the same as with our data structures. The problems are going to have interactions between them. And a better solution is going to be one where we have less interactions, where we have, what did I call that? Less coupling. So there's often lots of ways of breaking a problem into subproblem. For example, if you think of searching, and some of those ways, if you think about the algorithms you know, you'll notice the subproblems have high coupling. And some of them you'll notice they have low coupling. And you'll probably also notice that the low coupling ways are better. And they're faster. And they're easy to understand. There's no surprise to us now after doing OO design that that's the case. We also want to have this notion of cohesion happening. This was suggested by a student last time I ran the course, George, who's a lovely guy. He said, you also want each separate subpart of the problem to be really coherent. It's doing a single, concrete, really clear thing, not an amalgamation, a group of random things all sort of vaguely pulling in the same direction. And I thought about it, and the more I thought about it, the more he's right. The better problems that I know are broken into parts. Each part has a clear and defined purpose, and each part has as little connection with other parts as possible. So that's our general strategy for the whole next of the 4 weeks. Convex hull's a great example of a problem. I mean, there are a million solutions to convex hull. The convex hull problem's this. Have you already seen convex hull? No. Convex hull is you've got a series of points. Let's say it's in 2-dimensional space. But it could be in any dimensions. And you want to, well, what my lecturer said when he taught me, when I was a lad, he says you want to put a rubber band around them all. They're pegs on a pegboard. Put a rubber band around them all. You'll get a polygon. Which points are in the polygon and which aren't? Which are on the vertices and which aren't? So the convex hull for this set of points is this. But finding out the convex hull for a set of points is a tricky problem. If you've got n points, let's come up with some ways of solving that problem. Going back to the barometer problem that I'm not going to tell you the answer to. I will tell you one answer to it. The first thing you can do is the first strategy, real strategy you're going to try is brute force. How do you do a brute force on that? Start at the bottom, go up. Will it work? Yes. But it won't give us a really good answer. And we're after the optimal answer, so it's ruled out. Nonetheless, it was good to contemplate it. Hopefully the next thing you're thinking about is greedy. So a brute force for this, how would you work out a brute force? You got n points? Yeah, make every single polygon. How many of them are there? Well, you got to choose some points. So NC2 with 2 points in it, NC3 with 3 points in it, NC4 with 4 points in it. It's going to be big. I'm thinking it's probably going to be exponential. Is that what you're thinking too? It looks exponential. I haven't done a proof, so I can't say it, but it looks nasty. Prove as simply as possible that that's exponential. I reckon it is. Finding all points, trying all combinations, brute force, combinatorics, it's bound to be exponential. Bound to be, of course, is not a proof. So that's our first solution. Exponential is obviously not satisfactory. Can you see the number of polygons is going to be huge? It's not going to be any good. If you needed to find the convex hull of 4 or 5 points, you're okay. If you need to find the convex hull of 10 or 20 points, it's no good. So if your problem's really constrained, maybe you can use brute force, but otherwise we're knocked out. So our next strategy is greedy. What's a greedy approach to this sort of thing? There's 2 well-known greedy algorithms for solving this. Let's look at them. Yeah. Okay, so a greedy algorithm. What's a greedy algorithm? We want to make a series of choices. Each choice, when we make it, is going to be irrevocable. Yeah, no, hang on. Before we get to the actual thing, I just want you to understand the structure of what we're trying to do. The answer is going to be a series of points, right? And that's going to be, are you fooling with the camera? You're making me seasick. I'm turning upside down, I'm turning back the other way. Is this your way of saying, I'm bored, I'm bored? So an answer maybe is going to be a series of points. The points that are in the hull.
The points have to be given in order, or just?
Yeah, I guess it depends how you frame the problem. In order lets you work out all the edges really easily. Not in order just tells you the points. It depends what you're after and what you're trying to find out. Let's suppose we just want the points. I don't mind if they're in order or not. Let's just say they're not in order. Then your answer is going to be something like, oh, point A, point C, point M, point E, and point F. So notice your answer here has 5 bits to it. There's 5 components to the answer. And we're going to be picking those components one at a time. So a greedy algorithm will hopefully do something like work out the first component, then work out the next component, and then work out the next. And it doesn't matter what the later components are, the early ones will never go back and change them. Does that make sense? So say pick the furthest on the left as you start. And then one greedy algorithm is you just rotate a line around and the first point you hit is in it. Bing. Then you take a line and you rotate it around and the next point, bing. Next line, bing. Yep. That's not too bad, is it? How much work do you have to do then? Maybe what I do is, unless I've got a good data structure that lets me find the one angularly close, probably what I do is I probably draw the line to every other one of them and work out which has the gradient that's given the current direction, the next most clockwise around from me. That sort of naiveness would give me an n-squared solution. All right, that's not too bad. The advantage here is you see we're exploiting. The thing to notice is not a random algorithm. The thing to notice is our strategy is to build these up one at a time. We're doing that in a greedy fashion. We've noticed our answer has several components to it. So we're thinking, what's a way I can work out the components one at a time? Then you work out how much work I have to do for each component. But luckily, the different components don't interact with each other. And so, boom, that gives you a reasonable solution. So with our, the language I want to use when we talk about problems like this is I want to say that this thing down the bottom here, a collection of points that's in the set, that's the convex hull, I'm going to say I've got a notion of a problem state, a solution state, and an answer state. This is an answer state. It's like the answer to the problem. There's only one answer to this question. There's not a whole range of them, so there's only one answer state for a convex hull problem. A solution state is something that could be an answer state. That's an answer state. I've written it. I'm confused because they're on the wrong line. That's an answer state. It's the right answer. A solution state is a candidate solution. So before, when we were talking about brute force, what we were really saying was enumerate over all possible solution states and check which of them are answer states. So what's a possible solution state? I'm going to have this slight ambiguity with my definitions in this case. So to help me in the next bit where the ambiguity pops up, suppose we know the convex hull has 5 points in it. Not that that's relevant to this question. Give me a solution state. A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay. A problem state is a partially constructed solution state. So A, B, C. If we knew that the convex hull had only 5 points. It's a bad example I've given. So the idea is to brute force something, you could just enumerate over all the solution states. And the amount of work then, the complexity of a brute force solution is determined by the number of solution states that normally you can generate structurally, like this. So how many solution states are there? How many ways are there arranging 5 out of 10 or something? That's NC2, or NC5, 10C5. A problem state is a partially constructed solution state. Why am I talking about problem states? Whoever cares about problem states? Why don't you just jump straight to solution states? What's the relevance of a problem state? Because it's really going to be something we use a lot. It's a step in the greedy method, yeah. The greedy method normally constructs the solution state step by step, and it has all these intermediate things. The intermediate things aren't full solutions, like I've discovered I've got 2 points in it, I've discovered I've got 3 points in it. Nonetheless, I'm slowly building up the solution. Now, you don't have to do that slow building up if you're doing the brute force. You start straight away here. But the problem is there's normally too many of these. So what you're hoping by jumping back and actually, because can you see there's many more problem states than there are solution states. There's 5 factorial solution states in this problem. There's 5 factorial, there's all the combinations of picking, 10C5. There's 10C5 of these. There's 10C5 plus 10C4 plus 10C3 plus 10C2 plus 10C1 plus 10C0 of these. Because you've got ABC as a possible one of these, and so is RFG and ABCDE, and there's millions more of these than these. So you would think, why would a strategy that involves fooling around with these guys be better than a strategy that involves fooling around with these guys? Here we're fooling around with things that can't possibly be answers. But in the greedy method, that's actually the strength of the greedy method. If it turns out that your solution state can be constructed step by step, if it's broken into individual components, each of which have low connections with each other, or in this case, no connections with each other, they can all be solved independently of each other. Well, sorry, each can be solved independently of the future ones, depending only on the last ones. Then this is very fast. Let me give a more concrete example of this. In the film, and you might have heard me talk about this before, because it always blows me away. In the film The Matrix, and the opening credits, when they're rolling, have you heard me talk about this before? Do you remember what's happening? What's the opening of The Matrix? Starts with a phone, and then you hear a voice, and there's a graphic on the screen. And what's the voice saying? Neo, you're really cool, but can you show some expression over the next 3 or 4 days? Or something like that. No, they're not talking to Neo. My wife says, Keanu Reeves is awesome in that role. Keanu Reeves is awesome in that role. It's actually a part that calls for expressing no emotion. He's actually dead for most of the major scenes. It's really cruel. I think Keanu Reeves is awesome. I can't believe she said that. So the graphic at the start of The Matrix is someone's doing a phone call and they're trying to track the number. Do you remember that? They're trying to break the number. And if you look at the graphic, they're cracking what the number is. Now, how are they cracking it? Are they cracking it by brute force, by trying every possible number? No. Do you notice they seem to be, well, it's hard to work out exactly what they're doing. It's a bit confusing. They seem to be controlling it in a problem state way. They work out the first digit, then they work out the next digit, then they work out the next digit, then they work out the next digit. Does that make sense? The implications, because there's millions of digits flashing around while they're working this out, the implication is they're brute forcing it, but the visual is of them using some sort of greedy method. It only becomes apparent at the end that these are two completely inconsistent things when they get to the last digit. In fact, they enlarge the screen and the last digit falls off, and I think it's a deliberate thing so you don't see the last 1 or 2 being found, because there's only 9 possible combinations for the last digit. When they've found the second, all the digits except the last digit, they don't have to go through a million combinations on it. They've only got to try 9 or 10. So the idea is, if they really were brute forcing it and somehow finding them one at a time, to find the last one should be 10 times faster than it took to find the one before that. It should be 10 times faster than the one that took before that. I saw the same in a film with, an awesome film, with Pierce Brosnan in it called Thomas Crown Affair. They're trying to crack his code, his PIN number, to get into his house. Again, each digit, although they appear to be doing a brute force, takes just as long to solve. It's crazy. I'm up in the theatre shouting, everyone's saying, sit down, sit down, sit down. Can you see that if you can solve a problem like that by generating problem states, then it's really cool to solve. If you can actually solve what the phone number is digit by digit, it's a really fast way of solving the problem. But if you've got to try all combinations, it's a slow way. Now, the advantage of trying it digit by digit is, this is the same thing as I was talking about with unit testing before. Suppose you've got a system and it can take millions of different sorts of inputs. It can have this card, in your hand, or you could have that card in your hand, or you could have that card in your hand and that card in your hand. And you wanted to test the game. To test it, you're going to have to try every possible card they could have in their hand and every possible combination of circumstances if you're going to brute force test it. And can you see, there's a ridiculously large number of those. You could never brute force it. But were it ever to be the case that you could just test one card in isolation and then test the next card in isolation and then test the next card in isolation, and each card, say, has 10 possible states you've got to test, then instead of having to test 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 combinations, you've just got to test 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10. So if there's no coupling between them, if they're independent of each other, if you can actually build it up step by step, the problem state, if you can unit test your code and you don't just have to acceptance test it, if you can test each part individually, then the amount of work you've got to do is massively reduced, which is why we love greedy. It's not that it can be solved in a greedy manner. The thing about greedy that makes it exciting and fast is that it can be solved in a piecemeal manner, that you can break it into a series of pieces that can be solved more or less independently of each other. So you're converting a multiplication symbol into a plus symbol in all the work you're doing. Does that make sense to everyone? Sometimes the amount of work you've got to do to solve each one is ridiculously high. So you've got to hope that these really big numbers that you're adding together are more efficient than a whole lot of small numbers that you're multiplying together, say if you did a brute force one. And for some sorting methods that are greedy, you'll find that you don't get that huge benefit of all the greed because there is too much interaction between. Okay, is that cool? Are there any questions about any of what I just said? Do you think you understand the greedy method now? When you see a problem, please, after you've tried brute force, the very next thing to think of is can I solve this in a greedy fashion? And the question you have to ask, well, let me ask you, what would characterize a problem that you can solve in a greedy method, in a greedy fashion, using the greedy method? One that doesn't have dead ends. More concretely. You're seeing a problem for the first time, can you use greedy on it? I'm asking you, yes? Yeah, okay, thank you, well done. Step one, you've got to be able to break the whole problem into a series of, you've got to break the whole answer into a series of sub-answers. Step one. Step two, what were you saying? If they're not dependent on each other, boom, you're in straight away. Unfortunately, life's rarely that good. They're going to have some dependency between them. What's the trick as to whether you can use greedy or not? You've broken it into parts, they're slightly dependent, so you...
So like the one next to only
yes. I think you're saying causal dependency. I think that's what you mean by linear. Happens after, necessarily as a consequence of. That's really right, yeah. So what you want it to be is that the solution to one part, it's fine if it depends on the previous fragments you've solved, but the solution to this part must have nothing to do with the solution to the remaining parts. Oh, someone's lost a phone. Oh, there you go. Yeah. Congratulations, that was for that good answer before. Does anyone else want a phone? Does anyone want a wallet? Oh, it's not a wallet. A microphone. It's a sort of phone. Okay. So, nature of the problem. It's composed of parts. The problem states, it's got partial problem states and solution states. We want to find an answer state. A jigsaw puzzle. You're going to solve a jigsaw puzzle in a greedy fashion. Is it possible? Or would you solve it in a brute force fashion? Or would you just buy it already made and cut it out of the box, cut the lid out and say that's the answer? Or pay someone else to do it. There's all these ways of unanswering the question. But suppose we are going to solve it. What's your strategy? I watch my girls. Each of my girls has a different strategy. Who's going to try brute force? That would clearly work. Try every piece in every combination with every other piece. But why aren't we going to do that? Too many pieces. It's clearly going to be an exponential thing. It's going to be a factorial thing, isn't it? We're not going to do that. So, what's our next hope? Maybe we can solve it in a greedy fashion. I notice my girls, one of them, they both do it in a greedy fashion. One of them has looks at the shape they've currently got and a position and thinks, I want to find the piece that goes in that position. And she systematically goes through every piece, scanning it for color and shape and doing speed ups like that, I guess, until she finds the one that goes in that position. Then she puts it in and moves on. Can you see that's greedy? She'll never move that piece again. Perfect. It's a fair bit of work to find the piece, but it's going to be better than trying all possible combinations. How do you think the other one does it? Once you hear one solution, it's hard to even think of another one. It overjoyed me to watch them independently discover different ways of solving it. Probably if I'd had more children, I'd know more ways of doing jigsaw puzzles. But now I can never imagine them.
So they take the piece and find where it's
Yes, well done. One of them picks up the piece, works out where it goes, and puts it in exactly the right spot. She only touches each piece once. It's much harder. She can only do it on little jigsaw puzzles. She's not that awesome, but she's pretty awesome. They're both greedy. Can you see they both decompose the problem in completely different ways? There's lots of other ways you can do it. Yeah. What you're trying to do by color is decompose. Can you see what you're trying to do naturally is what we do when we design any solution to a problem that's good. You're trying to find, oh, half of them are red and half of them are green. I can decompose it into two separate problems in some way. They're not completely independent. Some of the reddy pieces will probably go in the bluey pile. But somehow you're trying to break it into sub-problems that are as not connected as possible. That's right. That's a good way of doing it. Jigsaw puzzles, two general approaches. Make local decisions leading towards a global outcome. Only works when the local knowledge helps the chooser towards a global outcome. If you want to maximize the amount of chocolate in a meal, here we go. I'm going to a restaurant. I love chocolate. Oh, I put my microphone off. It made me so excited. Who else likes chocolate? Who doesn't like chocolate? I've met someone who... You don't, Oswin, you don't like chocolate? Really? You do. I reckon everyone that said they like doing the hard thing... No. Everyone that said they like doing they'd go on the downhill path first, you've got to like chocolate. You would only be amongst the weirdos that go up that wouldn't like it. And, you know, I like it. It's my compensation for going up all the time. So I want to have as much chocolate as possible during this meal. It's at a flashy restaurant. There are 3 courses. There's an entree, there's a main, and there's a dessert. There's also a drink. To maximize the amount of chocolate in the meal, I could try all possible combinations of entrees, drinks, and so on and so on. But actually, it's simpler than that. I can do it quite quickly. I simply order the entree with the most chocolate in it, followed by the main meal with the most chocolate in it, followed by the dessert with the most chocolate in it, and I order the drink that has the most chocolate in it. Can you see you can break it into 4 parts? Solving each of those parts is a sufficient contribution to the solution to the real problem. Can someone think of a variant of that problem that would mean I couldn't use the greedy solution? Because now we're starting to drift. You've only seen greedy solutions so far. Let's start looking at when greedy doesn't work. I don't think it's right to call chocolate-based solutions greedy. Now I think about it, Michael. It should be the rational method. So yeah, tell me, what's your idea? What did you say?
I didn't say anything.
Oh, who said something? You did. Sorry, Andrew.
Set meals.
Set meals.
The meals are
Oh, yes. So one thing is a restaurant might have corroded the space. Rather than every possible state being possible, certain ones might not be permissible. You might only be able to get certain combinations. I was thinking it might be one of those flash restaurants where you're not allowed to order red wine with the fish or something like that. Out to the restaurant now. So they might say, if you had chocolate in the entree, you can't have chocolate in the dessert or something like that. So there could be constraints where, can you see this? Decisions made early affect decisions made later. You can't make the decisions in isolation. You might find you later on get to the end and you wish you could have gone back and changed that earlier decision. It would have made it better. But you made that early decision based only on that local knowledge and stuffed up a later one. Like the ATM machine. You really wanted those 50s. You get to the end, you can't get all your money out. You really wished you'd got some 20s earlier on, but you didn't. Yeah, you got to go. Okay, see. Yes?
The cost of the meal has to add to an exact amount.
Yes, there could be some other constraint like that. Again, that's eroding the possible... it's eroding the solution states. Not all solution states are possible. And it's eroding them with a sort of crazy constraint-based formula. That's right. And as soon as it's like that, you haven't got this thing that everything's independent of each other, boom, you're stuffed. Yes?
What if you didn't have to have an entree, main, and dessert? What if you could have 3 desserts?
Yeah. Then we've just got a different answer state. So what Lauren said was, what if you could just have 3 desserts? I really like the way you're thinking. And certainly, when I met my wife, we went out to our first date meal ever. We sat down and she said, what do you want? And I said, these desserts look so nice. Maybe would it be bad to order a dessert first? Because it would be terrible to fill up on the main meal if I was going to fill up. And she said, no, that's an awesome idea. And we both had dessert first. How about that? That's so cool. So can you see what you're doing there, Lauren, though, if you did that? You're changing the definition of what an answer state is. It's actually really important when you start solving a problem to think about this. This is a really important thing to do. You work out what an answer state looks like and the constraints on the answer states. It's absolutely vital. You normally, by what they look like, actually, what does an answer state look like? It looks like a solution state. That's what it looks like. And one of them is the answer state. So I should say, you work out the structure of the solution state as early as you can. And that often suggests to you how to solve the problem. Yeah, that's right. And if you can change the solution state so it's legal to have different combos, then yeah, you've got a different problem, and that sounds like a great problem. It sounds to me like, but can you only have one of every meal? Or I don't know. I mean, we're just talking about different problems. Yeah. I'm just fantasizing. I once went, just one last diversion. I went to France. It was on my honeymoon, and we went to a lot of poor restaurants because we were very poor. We were just cycling around. We had no money. But we saved up, and we had one nice meal. And we went to this lovely restaurant that had like hats or stars or something amazing. But it was just this little thing. And it was just fantastic. And I was looking at all the desserts, and they were all fantastic at the people on the tables nearby. And I couldn't decide what to do. And the guy said, oh, monsieur, would you like the degustation? Do you know what a degustation is? It's everything. That's what it was. It was everything. Oh, that's why it's got disgusting in it. That's the root of the word. So yeah, that was possible then. But you could still in the degustation only get one. Could I have a degustation with 9 of those ones I really like in it? No, monsieur. You must have one of everything. Okay. The multiplication effect versus addition effect, we talked about that. Unit testing, we talked about that. Lower cohesion, we talked about that. Algorithms using the greedy method, we've already seen. Sorting, which sorting algorithms that use greedy method?
Bucket sort.
What's that?
Bucket sort.
Bucket sort. Not exactly, because if you have to sort then later on within the bucket, you're not putting it in the right spot. I mean, in a way, yes, you're making an early decision, you now have to go back that it lies inside a certain range or something. But can you think of one that's even more intuitively? Yeah, selection, like even more bluntly. Selection sort, you pick the biggest one, you put it at the beginning of the array, it lives there forever, it never has to move. Yeah. Another one. What's that? Counting sort. I don't see counting sort as slowly building up the solution bit by bit, and at the end you finally got the whole thing. I see it as doing a whole lot of calculation, then suddenly putting everything in the right spot in one sort of thing. Like there's a lot of work before the thing. I don't see it as broken into a series of steps, each of which contributes a small bit to the answer. But yeah, depending on how you define greedy, yeah, it's just a word, it can mean whatever you want. Yep. Can you think of another one though? Bubble sort? No. Well, maybe I can't think of a definition of an answer state and problem state that would make it, but maybe it is. Why might it be?
Isn't it the same as selection sorting?
No, bubble sort, you move the two guys around, then later on you'll move them again, and later on you'll move them again.
With the largest one at the end after the first iteration. And it was
Yeah, so it depends how you define answer and problem states, but normally for a sort algorithm, the idea is you're doing a series of steps. In bubble sort, the steps are small local swaps, and they're not. But if you redefine bubble sort to say each passes a step, then sure, it's a selection sort. Well, then it's a selection sort. Yeah. Heap sort.
When you already have heap. Unheap.
Look, I was actually thinking of, you could come up with ways of viewing them as greedy, as slowly building up towards the right answer. For me, the most natural one, though, we haven't said is, so far, is insertion sort. Once I put you before you, you're before you forever. And that will never change. You know, like with your deck of cards, if you're a card player, you stick in the cards in, you stick new cards in, you stick new cards in. Sure, you have to do the insertion, which is a bit weird and might involve moving if it's an array-based thing. But essentially, the shape of the fan of cards in your hand stays the same, and you just add new ones. You pick the cards up one at a time, put it in the right spot. So I'm constructing the hand step at a time. Yes?
Because you stick in the pivot and it doesn't move.
Look, absolutely, you could define it like that. I don't see quicksort as like that because I guess the level of atomicity I'm thinking about is there's lots of little movements going on and every one of them is changing. But viewed at a high enough level, After you've done the partition, you know exactly where to put the pivot. So if you viewed quicksort as doing bit of work, place a pivot, bit of work, place a pivot, a bit of work and place a pivot, you only need one bit of work, don't you? Then yeah, absolutely, it places each pivot in exactly the right spot. That's right. If you could make those. The idea is you do a bit of work and you commit to something. How big that bit of work is and how much it involves is sort of up to how you define the problem.
I'm not sure. That's when you don't actually explicitly branch.
Yep, look, all these are possible. I can't, in fact, write it in your blog and say why. Write it in your blog and say why. But for me, they're the most simply, like obviously splitting it up. So what have we done? Greedy, 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 convex hull. Oh, greedy, convex. If I asked you to convert a decimal number into a binary number, the algorithm you would follow, if you're doing it on pen and paper, I reckon is pretty greedy. You'd probably find the biggest power of 2 that's smaller than that number and write a 1 there, and then you'd keep going like that. It looks a lot like the coin change problem, doesn't it? Except you only get 1 of each type of coin. Huffman encoding, I won't talk about that. Mazes. Can you solve a maze with a greedy strategy? Now, it's going to depend on how we define a maze and how we define solve. Let's have a yes. Walk with your left hand touching the wall. So that will work in a 2-dimensional maze, assuming the entrance and exit are on the outside wall or connected in some way. So yes, but if the problem was solve the maze in the shortest path, that's not going to do it. But it's better than a brute force way of doing it. It seems to me that if you had to find the best path through a maze, I can't see how you could use a greedy algorithm. And I'm not even trying to think of algorithms. The point is, there's something about the problem that instantly suggests to me a greedy algorithm won't work. What's that? That in any good maze, designed to encourage you, in fact, to make bad choices if they've actually been designed pathologically. So it's very hard to make, every time you get to a choice point, to make the right choice. It just doesn't seem like it's a very good maze if you could do that. To me, a maze, if it's a good maze, is an exponential thing, not a linear thing. So I don't think a maze solving algorithm could ever be greedy unless you defined it in a particular way. But it doesn't have the spirit of greedy for me. So I think that's all I wanted to say about greedy. Here are my 2 concluding points. If you can do it, do it. Greedy's awesome. Now, the amount of work you've got to do before committing greedily, if that's ridiculous, then maybe you consider other ways. But normally, no matter how much you do, being able to take a big problem and decompose it and solve each of those decompositions, cracking that, the pin number or the phone number of the matrix, being able to solve it digit by digit, if you can do that, it's just so much better than having to go over all possible phone numbers. No matter how much work you've got to do. You've got to check each digit 50 times before you're really sure. That's still only, for a 10-digit number, 10 times 50 bits of work rather than 10 to the 10. And secondly, if you can do it and you think you can do it and you know you can do it and you know you're right and your thing is so obvious it doesn't even need to be proved, what do you need to do? Prove it, prove it, prove it. Yeah. All greedy things need a proof attached to them. So we've seen the greedy method. The next thing we'll see in the next lecture, which you won't see for quite a while, and I won't see you for quite a while, but I'll continue to put things up. Oh no, not while I'm away, but I will put something up when I come back out of hospital quickly that weekend. So that's next week, about Wednesday or Thursday, something will go up. That'll be the rest of the lectures. And please keep working on everything. Damon, did you want to say something?
How to do it? Ask questions.
That's right. You don't want to be thinking about the tests at the very end.
The spec change. What was the timeline to it? Okay, so
People should just subscribe to your page and you can announce it there. Do you have an announcement page? Make an announcement page and everyone go and subscribe to that page and then you'll know. One last thing to say. As you know, in the final exam, you'll take your Roma game in. Just for your benefit and interest, and you'll also be able to take other people's games in. I'm going to release all the game solutions from last year's and put them up so you can all look at them. Obviously, if you use any of their code or copy any of their stuff, give credit to it or it's plagiarism and that's expulsion from the university. But you're welcome to do it. You just have to give credit. So use other people's stuff and give credit. Obviously, when we mark your MacGuffin and we assess how good you are at design, we're only interested in what you do. So none of the other stuff they do counts. But they might have great ideas that don't make your thing better. I love you looking at other people's work. It's awesome. Just make sure you acknowledge everything. Is that cool? All right. See you guys.
What was the objective of the barometer dropping one again?
Oh, the first one or the second one?
The one with 2 barometers.
You want to work out at which height, the first height, it will break at.
Okay. Okay, so